If you've ever been frustrated with yourself because you keep getting shiny object syndrome, I want you to listen to this episode of the Heart Centre Business podcast very closely, because I have noticed a trend of people mislabeling creativity and ideation as shiny object syndrome. So in today's episode, I want to help you break it down. Is it actually shiny object syndrome that you are experiencing? And what is it that we need to do when we feel like we cannot focus? We're chasing all of those shiny objects around. Now, this is episode number 492 of the Heart Centre Business podcast, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/492. It's also day 7 of Tashmas, and I have a new bundle freebie to give you at the end of today's episode. So stay tuned for that one, and you can go and grab the link for that with the show notes of today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/492. Let's jump into this one, because shiny object syndrome is not always what it seems. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money, and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Here's the observation that I have been making recently. I'm seeing a lot of business owners getting really cranky with themselves for having shiny object syndrome. But when I ask further questions, when we dive into it in a conversation, what they are describing is not shiny object syndrome. And I would even argue it's not a problem. And it's certainly not something to get frustrated with yourself about. So, first and foremost, what is shiny object syndrome? It is being distracted by a new idea and abandoning your current focus for that new idea. And that can tend to then lean into a pattern of jumping from one to the next without completing. So, for example, you decide that you're going to run a webinar, you get into the process of creating and starting to talk about the webinar, then you see something that says, webinars are dead, you should be doing 5-day challenges instead. So you abandon the webinar, you don't run it, and you jump into creating a 5-day challenge instead. But then you're halfway through the process of creating that, and you're told you should be doing low ticket courses. And so you abandon the 5-day challenge and you go and start creating a low ticket course. So that is what I would call shiny object syndrome. And an important part of the definition is the lack of completion of the original ideas. So some of the causes of shiny object syndrome can be comparisonitis, getting really caught up comparing yourself with other people. And so you're consistently changing your strategy, abandoning projects to move on to new things that seem to be more shiny. But it can also be when you are in a consumption rabbit hole, right? So especially if you are consuming a lot of podcasts, a lot of content, a lot of reels and YouTube videos, a lot of newsletters. And so you're just seeing a lot of different people and what they are doing, but you're not getting into creation mode yourself. So you do consume a lot of information, a lot of ideas, a lot of courses, but you're not necessarily creating when you consume that information. So you're in that state of consuming without creating. It can also come from a fear of success. So just as you get to the point where something might start to generate some momentum, maybe you got your first person asking a question that you struggled to answer, or you got a critique that you really feel like made you feel like you were a bit exposed. And so that fear of success can come up, that fear of visibility can come up, and also perfectionism. So you're 90% of the way through a project, but it's not good enough, it's not right, you need to redo it. I've had people do this recently where they decided that they were going to launch a podcast, they're they've recorded their first 15 episodes, and then they're going back and re-recording every episode before they've released one. Now, for me, the real definition of shiny object syndrome is where there's that lack of completion. And it's either a conscious or a subconscious decision to abandon a particular strategy. So you're not seeing anything through. Now, if that is the definition of shiny object syndrome, what is it that I'm seeing people labeling as shiny object syndrome, which is not it? What I see is people who have a lot of ideas, people who have 30 different options of where they might go next in terms of their content or their marketing strategy or the next product that they want to create, and they're struggling to decide between all of those different ideas. Those are not shiny object syndrome. Having lots of options in front of you is not shiny object syndrome. It's only where you're jumping from option to option without seeing anything through fully. That's where it's shiny object syndrome. And so the reason why I wanted to talk about this in an episode of the podcast is because when people are in a space where their entrepreneurial brain is doing its job and it's coming up with lots and lots of ideas. It's very creative. It's, trying to solve a bunch of different problems that it's seeing that are coming up for you. People are getting cranky with themselves for a lack of decisiveness. People are getting cranky with themselves for having this shiny object syndrome, and they're trying to not have shiny object syndrome, but in essence, what they're doing is shutting down their creative brain, shutting down their capacity to ideate. And I would hate for us to do that to our amazing problem-solving brains. So we need to learn how to discern what is actually happening here, and is this shiny object syndrome? Is this a self-sabotage, or is it simply a lack of decisiveness, or just that there are a lot of options and ideas coming up for you? If you keep calling ideas shiny object syndrome and labeling it as a bad thing, you could be shutting down your creativity and problem solving. Plus, you risk staying stuck in this negative self-talk and frustration. Ultimately, if you are feeling like you're struggling to make decisions or you're struggling to stay on path with a specific strategy or with a specific project, we do want to have a way to be able to stay focused. We do want to be able to have a way to know what to work on and to see it through. But if we keep mislabeling creativity and problem solving as this shiny object syndrome, we can actually be collecting evidence that reinforces the belief about who we are and how we behave. So instead, what I would encourage you to do is to pay attention to what is actually going on for you. And if you are feeling this sense of frustration, whether it's shiny object syndrome or whether it's indecisiveness or feeling like you've got way too many ideas and not enough time to implement them, is being clear on what your strategy actually is. So, what is it that you really need, whether it's shiny object syndrome or just a sense of frustration that you've got too many ideas and you can't seem to see things through, or you can't seem to focus on one thing at a time? I have 7 strategies for you. The first one is to ensure you have clarity on what your strategy is, the direction you're going in, what the priorities are. So I understand that one of the biggest reasons why we might find ourselves shopping around and looking at what everyone else is doing and getting caught in comparisonitis is because we're not 100% sure we've actually got it nailed. We've actually got it clear. So a little guidance and a little strategic advice can go a long way, especially if this is not your zone of genius or you're just a little too close to it. And that's certainly the case for me. I am a strategy genius, right? I'm very good at business strategy. I've been doing this a long time. I've worked in so many different niches and business models, but ultimately I'm a little too close to my own stuff sometimes, and therefore I need to either be working with my peers in mastermind sort of format or working with a strategic advisor who can give me a little bit of direction, who can even just review what I've got in train and what's planned to ensure that there are no big gaps that I've missed or that I'm not over engineering my strategy as well. That can tend to be where I get a little caught up. So it can be really helpful to get a dose of strategic input and a dose of strategic advice. But here is where I see this fall down, and this is actually number 2. And that is, now that you've got a strategy, do you actually believe in it? For a lot of people, you make a decision about the strategy direction you're going in. Okay, this is what my client attraction process is going to look like for the next few months. This is how I'm going to grow my mailing list. This is how I'm going to generate leads. And then you immediately send your brain on a mission to try and look for where it's not working. You've sent your brain out to go and collect evidence that the strategy you've chosen is inadequate. You've sent your brain on a mission to go and look for other strategies that might be working better rather than committing to the strategy that you've chosen. So if you're preempting the failure of the strategy that you've chosen from the outset, of course, your strategic brain, your ideating brain, your amazing creative entrepreneurial brain is going to get fixated on shoving a bunch of extra ideas in there, collecting and creating new ways that might be able to fix this problem. But is it actually a problem? For most people, the problem is not that your strategy is wrong. The problem is that you're not committed to the strategy you've chosen. And in reality, we can make any strategy work. I particularly absolutely know I can make any strategy work. People will ask me, should I be focused on Facebook or Instagram? And the truth of the matter is, I can make Facebook work. I can make Instagram work. People will ask me, should I be doing webinars or should I be doing evergreen lead magnets? Should I be doing low ticket offers? Should I be doing self-liquidating offers? I can make any of those things work. I can make any of them work. The problem is that you're so spread thin, thinking about, fixating on, indecisive about which one, that you're not actually seeing any of them through. And there's a slight but very important shift in the question that you ask. So most people, when they are reviewing their strategy or when they're thinking about what they're doing for the day, they're asking the question, will this strategy work or not? Instead, once you've chosen a strategy, the question you need to be asking is, how do I make this strategy work? It makes such a difference to the evidence you collect, the way you interpret your data, and also the way that you stay focused on what you are working on. So the answer to is this strategy actually working or not, then can reveal itself in data. And so what for a lot of people happens is they are looking at their reporting, they're looking at the numbers, they're looking at their data, and because they're asking the question, does this strategy work or not? Am I going to make this strategy work or not? Is this the right strategy for me or not? Then they're looking at their data to see what works and what doesn't. What's working and what's not working. So you look, for example, at that free lead magnet that you created. It's only had 32 people sign up for it and none of them have bought from you. So because the question you asked was, is it working or not? There's only one of two answers available and it hasn't made any sales. It's not working. So that's when it gets abandoned before it's actually been seen through. So now imagine you're looking at the data for that lead magnet and the question you're asking is, how do I make this work to its maximum potential? How do I make this lead magnet work? Now you're looking at the data through a different lens. The data is telling you something different. You're interpreting the data in a very different way. Instead of looking for evidence of whether it's working or not, you're looking for ideas, for spaces, for insight into how to make it work. So it might be that you've only had 30-something people go through that funnel. It just needs a little more time, because we know that we need to get 100 to 200 people through an evergreen lead magnet before we've got any real data about its conversion rate. And there's probably other data that will help you to look at insights and look for ways that you can make it work more effectively. At what point in watching the video do people mostly tune out? Therefore, we can re-record the video to be more effective and do a better job. Or you might look at the follow-up email sequence and 2 of the emails don't get a really good open rate. Okay, well, let's swap out those emails and now get another 100 to 200 people through, right? So you stick with a strategy longer when you stop asking, will it work or won't it? And you just start asking the question, how do I make this work? How do I make my evergreen lead magnet funnel work? How do I make my webinar work as a launch lead magnet? How do I make my launches work when I've got this process in place? How do I make my strategy on Facebook the most effective it can be? See the difference? And it's just by asking the question in a slightly different way. So, number 1 was the clarity of your strategy and direction and what's a priority, and that sometimes takes external viewpoints. Number 2 is once you've made a decision about what your strategy is and you've got that clarity of what the client attraction process is, you've got clarity about what your offer is, and maybe you've got a little bit of a validated offer, then your job is just to drive up your belief in the strategy you've chosen and go and look for ways to make it work rather than still being on the fence about whether it's going to work or not. Strategy number 3 is to pop things in the toy box. And this is when you've got a strategy, you're staying committed to that strategy, and your brain is still generating all of these new ideas and it's in a really creative place. Now, this can often happen when you've created a new product or service and you start sharing that product or service with the world, and your amazing audience, your amazing network start to feed back to you questions or even suggestions of what else you should be teaching or what else you should be offering. And it's lovely that they do that, but that does not mean you should immediately take that and start creating something new. Often, the best thing you can do is take that idea, thank your creative brain, amazing, I've come up with this amazing new idea for another product down the track, and then put it in the toy box. Put it in the toy box to play with later, because right now you've got something that you're focused on. Now, the other thing that I like to do with the toy box is I have play dates with items that are in my toy box. So generally, if I get an idea for a new product or service or a new offer, or even for a new freebie or a lead magnet or podcast ideas, I give my brain the opportunity to get out what it wants to get out. So that's why I have my podcasting book. I carry it with me everywhere. And so if I have an idea for a podcast episode, I will quickly jot that down so that I'm not dismissing my ideation. I'm not dismissing my creative brain. I am taking note of it. And the same thing happens when I've got a new idea for a product or service or another whole entire strategy or another business. Let's face it, how many of us have 16 side businesses we've never actually started? And so I do give myself the time and space to jot down what I need to get out of my brain, right? So I've got it captured and I pop it into the toy box. But what I also do is I give myself times in my calendar to play with things in the toy box. And so because I've got that time to play with those things, they're not consistently popping back into my brain uninvited, and I'm not allowing them to plant seeds of doubt in what I'm currently doing. Instead, I'm actively engaging with those toy box things. And that might be once a month, or it might be once every couple of weeks. I'll have a little hour or two to just go and organize and tidy my toy box, see if there's anything in there that kind of needs a little bit of extra love or that I get very excited about playing with. I've got one particular toy box project at the moment that I've been spending quite a bit of time playing with as we're getting into the end of the year, and it's so much fun. And so that toy box isn't just where ideas go to die. I've got lots of evidence that items that go into the toy box will be reimagined, rediscovered, and I will be re-engaging with them. And so I feel like that really allows my brain to have that sense of relief that it doesn't have to remember it. It doesn't have to keep bringing it back to the front of the queue, because I go and actively play with those things regularly. Which brings me to item number 4. And that is, for a lot of people, the reason why your brain is throwing so much ideation and creativity at you is because you don't give it time and space to be in that mode. So do you actually need to incorporate more ideation time and more creativity time in your week, in your regular business habits? If your brain is understimulated but overloaded, it will seek stimulation by creating new ideas, by throwing new insights at you. So it can sometimes be a sign that you're understimulated but overloaded. And understimulated doesn't mean you need to consume more content. I actually mean understimulated in that you're not using that, you're not being in creation mode. Sometimes that balance between create and consume is so one-sided that your brain is just being fed idea after idea, new concept after new concept. It has no time to process. Art and creativity and playfulness and, being in that ideation mode are your brain's opportunity to process all the information that's come at it over the last few weeks. And so having those regular creative and ideating dates in your business, with yourself, with your scrapbook, with your other projects, with the easel, if you want to get into the art. For me, it's also in pottery. Those opportunities to be in creation mode actually can often be the balm to an overactive brain that's just throwing idea after idea, task after task at you. Right, now, number 5. Direct your ideation and creativity power to the right problem. To the right problem. So it might be that your brain keeps coming up with new ideas for products, right? For things that you could sell. But your business doesn't have a lack of products issue. It has a lack of customers issue. So what we can do when we are quite strategic with this is direct that creativity into solving the problem you actually have. It can be very easy to label the problem as the product is the issue. People want a low ticket option. People want a product that delivers X rather than Y, which is what my existing products are focused on. People want help with this instead, so I need to create a new product for that. I'm not getting enough sales of my online course, so I need to fix it with a different product, a membership that then will bring in recurring income. But that's actually not going to solve the problem that you really have. So being better at identifying what the problem is and directing your creativity to solving that problem more effectively can often mean that that ideation, that creativity is being directed into the right place. For myself, a lot of the ideas that I come up with for new products are actually better served as podcast episodes or as new free resources. A lot of the ideas that I have for webinars that I want to run are actually the perfect workshop for me to present at the Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference. So it's not the idea itself. It's not the concept itself that's the problem. It's not the topic of the product that is the problem. It's just that my entrepreneurial brain will default to, how can I make money out of this? And so it will default to trying to create a product, trying to create something I can charge money for, which in and of itself is not a problem. But ultimately, if I look at my business and where the strategic gaps are, I don't have a problem with the lack of options for people working with me. And even when you are in the early stages of business and the only way people can work with you is one-on-one, that also does not mean you have a lack of options for people to work with you. People can work with you on anything because they get to work with you one-on-one. And so for most people, they automatically assume that new ideas, that new creations are best for their business as a new paid product or a new service, when ultimately that is not the problem they need to solve in their business. What they need to solve is their marketing and sales strategy. And these amazing ideas and this fabulous creativity that keeps trying to pop in to your brain and solve these problems is just being directed to the wrong part of your business. So whenever you've got that idea for a new product or a new paid service or a new way that people can purchase something from you, one of the most powerful things you can do is ask the question, how could this be part of the ecosystem that drives customers to my existing offers? Is this something that I could do as a free resource, as a piece of content, as a lead magnet, as a webinar, as a signature talk that I then shop out to being a guest on other people's podcasts? And it will actually then direct more and more people to my existing product and offer suite. Now, there's a whole conversation in there about bridge messaging, but I don't want to go too deeply into that because that could be a half-hour little detour we go on in today's episode. But all I will say is that for a lot of people, the reason why they feel like they need to create brand new paid offers is often in response to people either sharing objections or reasons why they can't buy your existing offers just yet. So for example, if you have people on sales conversations saying, yeah, that sounds really amazing, I'm just going to go and do this other thing first, or I just need to work on this other thing first, that can often be the seed of an idea for a new offer, right? That you need to create something that people can pay for to address that thing or to help them with that thing so that you're not missing out on the sale, so that you've got something that you can serve up to those people who are giving that objection or sharing that reason as to why they're not ready to buy your signature offer right now. So all I will say to that is that to me actually is a sign that you need to create free content that does that bridging for you rather than consistently defaulting into creating another paid offer. So where can you redirect that creativity to solve the right problem? And often you can direct it to your marketing and sales strategies and your free content rather than being frustrated that you've got 18 different ideas for new paid offers, but now you don't know which one to focus on, or you feel like you've created some confusion for your audience and in your messaging as well. Number 6 is looking at the way that you plan and self-manage your implementation of that plan. Is the reason that your brain is coming up with so many new ideas and feels like it needs to be all in the creative space because you don't know what you're doing today? And so because you don't have clarity on what the plan is for today, your brain naturally goes into coming up with things you could do. And in doing so, it's going to focus on new ideas. It's going to focus on getting really creative. So your brain is actually trying to invent a plan for the day because you don't have that clarity on what is your priority. So if you put your plan for the day front and center, this can often mean that you are applying that amazing creativity and ideation to the thing that's a priority right now, rather than inventing new things to focus on. One of the most powerful things that I do is the way that I end my day. So at the end of each workday, I close off for the day with a very consistent routine, a consistent ritual. And that ritual includes writing down in my day planner for tomorrow what are the most important things I need to do tomorrow. And what I do is when I've finished up, I close up my day planner. I shut down my computer. Yes, I close all of my tabs every single day. I actually go through the process of shutting down my computer, and I put my planner on my keyboard. When I used to work on a laptop, I'd put my planner on top of my laptop. I'd close the lid and put my planner on top of it. But these days I have an iMac, and so I put my day planner on my keyboard. What that does is it forces me to pick up my day planner every single morning. So what I'm doing is I'm creating that little routine for myself in the morning of opening my planner and seeing exactly what I need to do today first thing, before I can open emails, before I can open social media, before I can do anything else. The first thing I am going to see is my task list for today. And it is never more than 4 things. My task list is very short. Now that is with good reason. When I start my day, I see the 4 most important things that I need to do today right there in front of me. And I am not giving my brain any signals of, I don't know what I'm doing. Because one of the other things that can happen is if the task list is too long, I get into avoidance mode. So rather than looking at a to-do list of 28 things, my brain will make up other fun things for me to do. And so I'm just adding to the list more than I'm actually crossing things off. So instead, I end my day by writing down the top 3 or 4 things that I need to do tomorrow. I close up my day planner, I put it on top of my keyboard, and that is how I can be so effective and so productive and focused in my day because of that end of day routine. So how do you set yourself up to know exactly what you need to do when you sit down at your desk, rather than sitting down at your desk and now you're putting your brain to work to try and figure it out? It will ideate. It will create new things. So I'm also just making sure that I'm not accidentally asking something of my brain that would be counterproductive to my day. The final one, number 7, is to work with a mindset practitioner. And I think that this is mission critical in most phases of business. When you're in the early startup phases of business, having someone who can help you discern between what is a strategy issue and what's a mindset issue, and also help you work through those mindset issues as they come up, is absolutely powerful in fast tracking and accelerating your results. Similarly, if you're going through a growth phase, if you're moving into leverage, if you have big plans for how you're going to grow your audience, how you're going to increase your income, those things come with mindset challenges. And I'm not talking about simply that you don't want those goals really, or you've got a fear of failure or a fear of success. The longer I'm in business, the more complex my mindset stuff becomes, the more I see that it's a combination of the energy that I bring to something, the mindset, some of the lessons or stories I might be carrying forward. And it is so powerful to work with a mindset practitioner. Especially for myself, with a lot of negative self-talk that I brought into being a business owner, and also having a neurodivergent brain, it takes learning and practice to be able to stay focused and also to stay strong in what I've decided I'm working on. I can be very easily distracted. I can very easily fall into the belief that everyone else has it figured out and I don't. I very easily fall into jumping from idea to idea rather than completing and finishing things. And rather than that becoming another belief about myself that just becomes more negative self-talk, it's important that I work with a mindset or energetic practitioner to ensure that I'm learning the lesson without carrying the baggage. When people join my takeoff program, it's in the welcome modules that I recommend people engage a mindset practitioner to work with. And I understand, especially in the early stages of business, that you might not have the financial capacity to work with someone one-on-one very regularly. But I do think that whatever you can access in terms of one-to-one support or some kind of personalized support with a mindset practitioner, it really does compound the results that you generate. It accelerates your growth. It accelerates the results that you generate in those early stages of your business. And particularly with the takeoff program, because people are being more visible, they are often in charge of themselves and working without a boss for the first time. And so that can bring up lots of different challenges and ways that we might sabotage ourselves. It can bring up that shiny object syndrome. And so being able to work with a mindset practitioner who can help you to not just clear the mindset blocks that are coming up, but also interrogate them and go deep in what's underneath them, what's underpinning those mindset blocks, those energetic barriers that seem to be between you and taking the action you want to take or generating results from those actions. It's so powerful in fast tracking not only the insight, but then also the results of the action that you are taking. So there you have my slightly hot take on shiny object syndrome and the mislabeling of creativity and ideation as shiny object syndrome, as well as 7 strategies to help you to ensure that you are channeling the ideation and creativity into the right spaces, that you are focused on the things that are mission critical for you in the stage of business that you're at and the strategy that you've selected, and also in ensuring that you're clear on what exactly it is that you're doing and finding strategies and techniques that will help you to ensure you see it through and you are in the habit of completion, not just starting things off. And I hope that you've found that super helpful and there have been some insights that will help you. This brings me to the Tashmas gift for today, day 7. And it's actually a new bundle of free resources. So you may have seen me previously sharing my quarterly plan on a page. And also you may have also attended my productivity power up training. Well, what I've done is I've actually put together the productivity power up into a new bundle of resources for you. And you'll be able to grab that beautiful free gift for a very limited time only with the show notes of today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/492. Make sure you go and grab that one sooner rather than later, because after Tashmas is finished, it will just go back to being the regular productivity power up. So if you're listening to this after Tashmas is complete, there will still be a gift for you over in the show notes, but it'll be extra juicy if you grab it before Tashmas is over. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. Until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. I'll see you tomorrow for day 8.